Damper tuning in sim racing will absolutely not make you the fastest guy on track, but it does have the potential to make you the absolute slowest driver on the track. And in this video I'll explain why you can be really slow with the wrong damper settings, how you lose consistency, how you lose grip, how you get extra tire wear because you have the wrong damper settings. Now take note, this is Le Mans Ultimate. I've been sim racing for multiple years and I think this simulation really dials down dampers really well. I'm going to show that with examples. We're going to show some presets, how to understand them, how to use them. Don't skip ahead to the video and get to the presets to start applying them, because if you miss important details of this video, you will just not know what you're doing with the damper section. Let's go. But before we get into the juicy stuff of the dampers, we need to understand something else first, and that is the tire contact patch, because all of this suspension jargon was designed for the optimal tire patch. If we didn't have any suspension, we couldn't influence this behavior. Let's talk about tire patch and how to optimize it. And the reason why tire patch is so important, it's our only contact with the road surface, and if you get that wrong, you get a strangely behaving car, you will miss out the pace, you will heat up the tires, you will have tire wear, you're gonna have all sorts of issues. The tire of your car, every one of them, can be in three kind of states. They can be on an overload situation, they can be underloaded, and they can have like the balance optimized tire contact, road contact. If you have a tire that is overloaded, that means that there's a lot of forces on the tire itself, right? So if you have suspension bottoming out, or you have a very stiff suspension, this means that the tire patch will get bigger and will lose coefficient of friction. You can just forget that, but it just basically means that when you have too much load on a certain tire, yes, you will have more grip, but you also lose effectiveness and efficiency. When it's underloaded, well, that's the obvious thing, of course. This is a situation where there's just no pressure on the tire, not enough. So if you have the wrong damper setting, this can be a situation that might occur on some parts of the track. Now, and then we have the balanced area. This is basically the tire window where we want it all the time, but it's actually pretty hard to find. Oh, and by the way, this is a massive simplification on what tire patch actually is. I looked up a lot of content about this part of what a tire does and how it's rolling off to the road surface and all the forces and rubber and molecules and all this fucking stuff what's happening. But we're going practical here, yeah? This is just how we are going to understand it and actually apply it, because the depth of how complex a tire actually is, I don't believe they can simulate that like how it's actually going in real life. So we don't have to worry about that. But just know this. Big load tire patch. Bruh. So let's move on. Now, what does overload mean from a spring and a suspension like a damper problem? Well, overload, so this means that let's say we're driving over a road surface that's really rough, like this one. Better pray for a GT3 car that we don't have these kinds of surfaces, but I like to make it extreme so we can understand it. What this basically means is that we encounter a bump or a rough road surface, and if we have a bump setting and stiff spring, then at this moment, if the spring will not travel upwards because it's so stiff, then that force needs to go somewhere. So in this instance, the tire will pick up that load and we get that bigger contact patch all of a sudden. What does this mean? Well, this means that the rubber will deform. You know, at some point it gets higher, the friction gets higher, so it creates heat in the tire and it creates overload and you lose tire grip efficiency because of it. The underload situation is a problem that, let's say we encountered some sort of a jump or a bump or a curb and the wheel was flying up with low bump value, then this means that the tire flew up. But if we have very harsh and stiff rebound dampening, this means the tire will be up in its chassis basically, and we lose out on tire contact, right? So this is a situation whenever the wheel is starting to go on the tarmac again at some point, this is how you get wear. Because every time the wheel is in the air and it comes down. Now, to some extent, it might not go in the air, but it might lose contact on very critical points, especially when you're doing a curb or a jump. If the tire is not allowed to go downwards fast enough, yeah, you just don't have any tire contact. You're underloading the tires and you will lose grip because of it. And absolutely you will lose lap time. Now, obviously, you want a wheel and a tire that is kind of like aligned with the road surface, that will move up quickly enough, but not too fast. And it will also need to go push down, but also not too fast. Because in the next example, I will show you extreme values to make a point, to finally understand dampers. And then stick around, because in the end I will make some presets on how to start tuning those dampers. So you can actually use it, right? So let's look at the examples. So in the first example, we'll really roughen up that damper section, and we'll just make everything as hard as possible, right? We are running the lowest wheel rates. On Sebring, I think it's a good idea to run lowest wheel rates. It's very bumpy, and any stiffness in the spring will just overload the tire when we're jumping and all that stuff. What I did with the settings, I did graphics, and I put the lock to horizon to off, so we can really feel those dampers. And to be honest, if you look at the next example, if you would be in this car for real, you would absolutely lose your spine, and yeah, you will come out of the car with some sort of a nerve sickness probably. So let's show you what absolutely hard dampers are. And if you're liking this content this far, could you please hit that like button? If we get this video up to 500 likes, I know it's a lot, but if we can get it there, we will make a part 2 of this video, and we go even way deeper into dampers, because we're just scratching the surface here. Now, important to note, we have a damper setting that will extend very slowly and will compress very slowly. And if we now go on this straight, on this corner, and we hit throttle, and we are braking, you can see that this car is just... There's nothing happening. It's staying in one place. So if you look at this corner now we have constantly, like, the tire needs to pick up all these shocks because the suspension is just not moving. And we lose a lot of grip because of it. And you can see how absolutely jumping this car is. And every time it jumps, the wheels start overloading, basically all the time. And you can also feel it in the force feedback in this absolutely awesome game. Now, it's pretty safe to assume that we are really hurting performance on this track. We're probably... It's very skittish, harsh, and yeah, it's absolutely a disaster to drive. Now, let's show the other extreme, which is super soft. What does this mean? Well, the suspension, the wheel, can travel inside its suspension like super easy, like it will fly up, and then when as soon it's there and it hits like with its velocity, and if it hits air, it immediately pushes down back to the tarmac again. Let's have a look how that looks. So you can already see in the car when we apply throttle and braking, it's jumping up and down like we don't even have any shock absorbers anymore. Now, if you would put a gun to my head and I had to pick one of these two values, then it probably would do this one. But then again, this is also not optimal. I tried really like fast laps with this damper setting, and although it's very grippy, in slow corners and it's actually really good on the bumps, it's still not faster, and I will explain why that is. So now you can see that, like, it's like we're driving on some sort of a soft mattress. It looks like a Citroën BX, you know, like the old Citroën car with the hydraulic suspension. Now, I don't know if you can hear it. Maybe we can do a little bit more. I will be quiet. So as I'm braking, you see the car is kind of like static, you know? Because we have such a soft front bump that the suspension is bottoming out. And this also creates overload in the tire, which also loses grip on the tire. So this is also not an ideal situation. Very nice, Arnold. What should we do then? Well, I think it's a smart idea with the low springs to start off setting everything to soft, because different cars will have different values over here. So if I will say, oh, just do 5 and 10 and I don't know, like 5 and 10, slow bump and slow rebound. I don't know, something like that, right? This is something like with these, I don't know what this actually means. I don't know what 10 means. Does it mean 10 times faster? Does it mean 10 hamburgers? Does it mean 10 millimeters per nanosecond? I have no clue what that means, but what I do know is that this is soft and this is hard. So 22 is like 100%, and obviously 11 will be 50%. So think about when you have a soft spring to do, I don't know, let's do half of the dampening of the bump, right? And then we do the rebound. Now this is an interesting one, because I've like if you ask people about rebound, if I looked up a lot of articles and all like information, typically they say you want a wheel that forces into its suspension, but you want to make sure it goes outward a bit more slowly. Because else you will get a pogo stick, a jumping pogo stick. Meaning if you have a very hard bump and you have absolutely no rebound, then it takes a lot of force to compress the spring, and then pop, it jumps up. And you know, when it jumps up, it's in midair again. You lose tire contact because of it. So that's absolutely an undesirable situation. But you want to have rebound to bring that tire down to the road surface. So you don't have to think about rebound. You don't have to think about fast bump. You don't have to think about fast rebound, because this is what you're going to do. You're going to set the bump, slow bump only. And let's say you were saying, okay, let's go halfway, just like normal. Let's go 10. What you're gonna do then with the rebound, you're gonna make that a little bit harder. Let's do 5 points. So this is like, I don't know how much percentage this is. It's like 25% stiffer rebound. So now when the car has slow bump, the spring compresses and it takes a bit longer to go out, right? So we keep the car planted, but not too much. So let's do that. Then we can think about the fast bump. Let's think about fast bump, right? I like to do them on the same values. I don't believe you can treat them separately. Also, a lot of people have opinions about this, and I wouldn't also know how it exactly works. But yeah, let's go with these values, 15 and 10 and 15. Let's do another lap, or let's do another sector 1, because this is such a, like, if you want to tune dampers for bumpy tracks, I think that Sebring is an absolute great idea. First, let's go to the sponsor of this video, and that is myself. I'm offering coaching now for car setup building and for increasing your lap times in ACC, Assetto Corsa Competizione and Le Mans Ultimates. And also check out the Patreon store and my Discord. In the Patreon, I build this skill level setup. So if you're really a rookie, you can even get those setups and those will be fitting for you. And you can pick higher levels to start learning more aggressive setups for every track. Let's go on with the video. Now it still feels to me that it's kind of jumping a lot still. So that's also another point I want to make, because we could think about being 0 being like nothing, and we could think about 22 being hard. But what if Le Mans Ultimate did not think about this linearly? What if soft is actually really soft and maybe like 5 is already half of the stiffness? Now, I hope it's not like that, but this is where telemetry comes in. And again, if you really want to go for that perfect tire contact patch, you should go into Motec. Well, I installed Motec, but I don't get any tire force. I don't get any histograms. So I'm a little bit limited on how to set up Motec properly. Maybe you can let me know in the comments how you set up Motec. Also, let me know what you think of this video. You know? So, okay, let's move on. Okay, I thought it was very harsh, so I will bring this down. So I'm a little bit overdriving the car. I actually have an absolute great time in this car, but this feels already a lot better. So if I attack this first corner now, I actually I feel more grip. It feels like the tires have better contact at this moment. I can also make this corner all of a sudden. And you can see, like, I don't know, it's gonna be very nuanced and maybe it's a little bit of a placebo, but you can see that these tires are just more aligned with the surface. There's like more efficiency, and as I'm turning into the corner, I actually make the apexes. And if you have a very soft suspension setup, we overload the tires because we're bottoming out the suspension. And when we are going really hard, then also the tires are completely like overloaded all the time. So you want that tire to be in a moving window basically all the time without compromising that it's gonna constantly hit the bump stop or packers, because that will set a sort of overload in the tire. So great, this is like how I would go into some races and just keep going from there. And obviously you can bring up that bump, you can bring up that rebound, maybe you bring that rebound a little bit close-ish, maybe that will be better for you. But then this was on soft springs. Yeah, what are you gonna do with hard springs? And why and when would you pick hard springs? If you go into that file that is on the pinned comment, there's like a little bit of a summary how I think about this. You can sign up on my free Patreon and get this damper presets, because I'm thinking about building this different presets. So let's say this was a great way, like a little bit of like a halfway bump and rebound for soft spring, but I also want to figure out when we go really stiff on the springs, what kind of damper settings presets you should think about. So have a look. Just imagine if you have a track that's really smooth, like very smooth, and you have fast corners, then soft springs might not be the best idea. Then you want to have a stiffer spring. But let's go maximum very stiff spring. What does that mean for bump then? Because if we have a very stiff spring and we have a lot of hard bump dampening, this means that there's even more force required to push the tire in. But if you have a very stiff spring on the rebound, then we might want to run some extra rebound dampening. Because we have such a stiff spring, it needs to come out slowly, or else we have this pogo stick effect, like times 3. you know, so it was already taking a lot of force to push in the suspension, so it needs to come out slowly. That's a little bit how I think about it. But yeah, this is a practical example for Sebring, and yeah. Now, what we did in this video is basically look at dampers from a mechanical standpoint, but we can also look at them from an aerodynamic standpoint. If we can hit that like goal of 500 likes, I know it's a lot, but if we can make it, I will make a damper video where we actually change the car behavior and look at aerodynamics and this mechanical grip section together, because now we only did the front and the back the same, and we can definitely get another behavior in the car when we change up the front and the back together. In the meanwhile, when we don't hit the like goal or whatever, here will be a video how to set up the aero balance, because if you have a great aero balance, you can get into these steps using the softer wheel rates. Thanks for watching.